All right, if you haven't already, you can go to the website and download this page to help you. We're doing 1 point perspective and we're working on our ruler skills. One of the things that we work on in class is starting your line at the object and then lightening your guideline's weight as you get closer to the vanishing point. This adds to the feeling of depth. Another thing that's really helpful is rotating the page as you go and keeping your ruler in roughly the same orientation all the way around. This creates consistency in your line weights, and it also allows you to work a lot quicker because you grow more comfortable using the ruler in the same position as opposed to constantly trying to rotate the ruler around and use it from different positions. So once all your guidelines are drawn back to the vanishing point, we'll go ahead and darken in the lines around each of the squares. These squares will eventually, of course, become three-dimensional forms. And when you're tracing the squares, if you start at the corners and pull your lines in towards the center, as I'm doing here, instead of attempting to draw the entire line in one pass, this will keep you from having overhanging lines that need to be erased later. Another thing that can speed up the process if you have multiple lines, let's say vertical lines, across the span of the page. It helps to do all your vertical lines first and then transition and do all the horizontal lines next, rather than doing one box at a time. It requires you to rotate the page a lot less and just cuts down on unnecessary movement. When you're doing these outlines, you should be using a fairly heavy line weight. I'm applying more pressure than I would if I were just normally writing with my pencil. That's to just add value to the line, increasing its darkness and making it jump out into the foreground. So there are a few things that we do to create a sense of depth, and as things get further away, they tend to get a little more hazy. As they get closer, obviously, they have more detail and a lot more vibrancy and color. Now, this next part, we're going to start doing the back edges of the boxes. And early on, when you're doing 1 point perspective, if your cubes are looking wonky, there's a good chance that your lines are not parallel. You'll see this here in a second. I'll show you again in just a second. The other thing that you want to make sure is, even though you're drawing a small span for the edges of the cube, you want to always line your ruler back up to the vanishing point, and that will help your cubes look a lot more realistic. All right, we're going to do this next cube here. And notice how I kind of rotate the ruler around. Early on, sometimes it can be difficult to see because the guidelines are angled. It sort of makes it difficult. So what I'm showing you now is, if you use a clear ruler like I'm using, you can actually use the lines on the rulers to help you make parallel lines. If you don't do that, you can also squint your eyes, and by squinting your eyes, the lighter guidelines start to kind of disappear. They don't grab your attention as much, and it's a little bit easier to see the square that you've already drawn in that dark, heavy line weight. And that allows you just to ensure that your ruler is parallel. It's just a lot easier. So here I go again. This time I'm using the measurement marks on the ruler as my guide and making sure that the ruler's parallel to that outside edge of the square there before I draw the back edge of the box or the cube. And again, doing that again. Of course, you don't always use a clear ruler. Sometimes you might be using a metal straight edge that you can't see through. And in that case, I recommend squinting your eyes so that the guidelines kind of disappear. Just makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, so we just got 2 more cubes to go. This activity does not take a really long time to actually accomplish, but to be able to remember all the little tips and tricks and getting your line weights right, making them vanish as they go towards the vanishing point, getting your lines parallel, getting the line weights so that they look crisp and clean, that can take several times and lots of practice to get that where you feel very confident doing what you're doing. On the last cube here, we're on the next to last cube, but on the last cube, you're going to notice that it's very close to the horizon line, and as objects get closer to the horizon line from either a great height or lower on the page as they come up to the horizon line or come down towards the horizon line, the plane that you would normally see, what I mean is like the bottom of the cube that you would normally see, gets flatter and flatter, and that's going to make this portion right here look really squished together. And so you're going to have to be very careful when you do objects that are close to the horizon line. So I'm flipping my ruler around again just to help me make this line parallel, but you'll see even doing this, this back edge almost, when we do this guideline, there's just, well, we'll show you in just a second. But yeah, the diagonal guideline going back to the vanishing point and the back edge of this box are not on that radically different of an angle. So just takes a high level of precision to make this portion consistent and believable. So, but yeah, feel free to download this from the website mrhen.com. You can get this and a lot of other activities there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you. Please comment if it did, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.